Okay, guys, so number one on the review, function A is this parabola right here. The vertex is at point A, that's at negative 1, 2, 3, negative 1, 2, 3, 4. The x-intercept is where we cross the x-axis at this point and this point, so that's negative 1 comma 0. And it also crosses at 2, 3, 4, negative 5 comma 0. The y-intercept is where we cross the y-axis, which would be about right here, and that'd be at 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 0, comma 5. For function b, we have a vertex at 2, comma 1. Our x-intercepts are located here and here at 1, comma 0 and 3, comma 0. And our y-intercept is where we cross the y-axis right here at 0, comma negative 3. For graph C, our vertex is on the y-axis at 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. So that's going to be at 0, comma negative 7. It does not cross the x-axis at all because it's facing down underneath the x-axis, so there are not any x-intercepts. And the y-intercept is the same as the vertex 0, negative 7. For graph D, the vertex is the point where everything goes around. So if you notice, we have 0 and 0, negative 6 and negative 6. The point in the middle is right there at 2, comma 2. So the vertex would be 2, comma 2. The x-intercepts is where we cross the x-axis, or in other words, where y is equal to 0. And we have those at these points right here. So that would be at 1, comma 0 and 3, comma 0. And our y-intercept is the y value when x is 0. And we have this point right here. That's our y-intercept, 0, comma negative 6. E, our vertex again, is where the graph turns around. And you can see that we have 4 and 4 surrounding the 3. So negative 2, 3 is our vertex. Our x-intercepts is where our y value is 0, and you can see that we never go below 3. That's our minimum value, so there are no x-intercepts. And our y-intercept would be 0, comma 7, because it's the y value when x is 0. Okay. For number 2, solve using factoring or completing the square. So if we factor, we've got A, B, and C. A times C is 33. B goes on the bottom. And we need two numbers that multiply to be 33 but add to 14. That would be 11 and 3. So that means this would factor into an x plus 11 times x plus 3 equals 0. And the zero product property says that we're going to subtract by 11. We set each of these equal to 11. Each of them equal to 0, and subtract 11 on both sides to get x equals negative 11. Subtract 3 on both sides, x equals negative 3. For part B, we're not able to solve it by factoring, so we're going to complete the square. So step 1, we want to make sure that we move the constant to the other side, and we have x squared plus 4x plus blank equals positive 7 plus blank. To fill in the blank, we need to take our b value. The formula for that is b divided by 2 squared. So this would be 4 divided by 2 squared, which is equal to 2 squared, or 4. So 4 is going to go into our blank spots. So x squared plus 4x plus 4 is equal to 7 plus 4. We can factor the left side, and the fastest way to factor it is just to divide b by 2. So we get x plus 2 quantity squared is equal to 11. Square root both sides, and we get x plus 2 equals plus or minus the square root of 11. Don't forget, plus minus always goes on when you take a square root. And subtract 2 from both sides to get x equals negative 2 plus or minus root 11. Okay. Solve using the quadratic formula. So again, our values are A, B, and C. But before we do that, we need to make it equal to 0. So we're going to add 6 to both sides. So we get 5x squared plus 15x plus 11 equals 0. And now we can plug this in the quadratic formula. X equals negative b plus or minus the square root of b squared minus 4 times a times c all over 2 times a. So we get negative 15 plus or minus 15 squared is 225. 225 minus 220. So that would all come out to 5 all over 10. Okay. And we can't reduce this all by 5 because we can't touch what's under the square root. It has to stay like that. This would be our final answer for A. For part B, again, it's equal to 0, so we can do A, B, and C. That's a 1 in front of the x squared, so our A value is 1. So x equals negative 2 plus or minus the square root of 2 squared minus 4 times 1 times negative 11 all over 2 times 1. Let's clean it up a little bit. Plus or minus the square root. 2 squared is 4. Negative 4 times 1 is negative 4. Negative 4 times negative 11 is positive 44. So 4 plus 44 is 48, all over 2. And we're going to take this opportunity to reduce or simplify the square root of 48. The square root of 48 breaks down into 2 and 24, 2 and 12, 2 and 6, 2 and 3. Circle the pairs. Okay. So we get x equals negative 2 plus or minus. For each pair, we're going to bring out one representative. So we have 2 times 2 with 3 left over, so it goes back under the root, all over 2. So x is negative 2 plus or minus 4 root 3 all over 2. And since both of these numbers are divisible by 2, we're going to go ahead and go for it. X equals negative 1 plus or minus 2 times the square root of 3. Okay, for the probability problem, 3 types of hot coffee drinks out of 6 total types of drinks, so this would be a 3 out of 6. Hot tea is 1 out of 6, and iced coffee is 2 out of 6. And again, we have the same fractions over here, 3 out of 6, 1 out of 6, 2 out of 6. So we multiply these together, and remember when you multiply by fractions, you multiply straight across. So 3 times 3 would give you 9, 6 times 6 is 36. 3 times 1 would give us 3, 6 times 6 is 36. 3 times 2 is 6, 6 times 6 is 36. 3 times 1 is 3 over 36. 1 times 1 is 1 over 36. 2 times 1 is 2 out of 36. 3 times 2 would be 6 out of 36. 1 times 2 is 2 out of 36. And 2 times 2 is 4 out of 36. Okay. So we're just multiplying all of them. All of your numerators should add to 36 because your probability should never add to be greater than 1. It should add to be exactly 1. So 9 plus 3 is 12, plus 6 is 18, plus 3 is 21, 22, 24, 30, 32, 36. So what is the probability that both drinks will be hot coffee? So hot coffee and hot coffee would meet right here. That is a 9 out of 36 probability. You can write probability as a reduced fraction, 1/4, or you can do it as a decimal, 0.25, or you can put it as a percent, 25%. Keep in mind that 0.25% is not the same as 25%. Probability both drinks will be hot, so that means we're going to look only at the hot drinks like that, and we're going to add all of those together. So we have 9 out of 36 plus 3 out of 36 plus 3 out of 36 plus 1 out of 36, which all together would be 16 out of 36. And when you reduce, it becomes 4 out of 9. As a decimal, it would become 0.44. And the probability that neither drinks will be hot means both of them would be iced. So iced coffee here means 4 out of 36, or 1/9, or 0.11. Next up, find the unknown angle values. So we're looking for an angle, which means we're going to use inverse trig. This is opposite. This is hypotenuse. And we need to look at SOHCAHTOA for guidance. The trig function that uses opposite and hypotenuse is sine. So we say sine of x is equal to opposite over hypotenuse. Since I'm trying to find an angle, that's going to be sine inverse of 12 over 16. To plug that into your calculator, make sure you hit the second button first before you plug in sine. So second sine, you can see it now says sine inverse of 12 divided by 16, 48.59. So that's equal to 48.59 degrees. Same thing over here. Circle the angle. We're going to go opposite. If you go past the right angle, that's always the adjacent side. Hypotenuse is over here. Opposite and hypotenuse, again, we're looking at sine. So sine of x is equal to 17 over 28. We're looking for an angle, so x is equal to sine inverse of 17 over 28. Plug that into our calculator, and we get 37.38 degrees, because angles should always be measured in degrees until you get to advanced math and its radians. Given the set of triangles, complete the flowchart proof. So we have basically everything given to us. B and D are congruent. So you would say angle B is congruent to angle D, and that is given. We have BA is congruent to DE, and that's also given. Then we have these angles. Angle A is congruent to angle E, and that is also given. So therefore we have angle side angle, and we need to make sure that we name them appropriately. Triangle BCD is congruent to triangle DCE, and it's only important that you make sure that the letters line up. For example, B and D are congruent, so they need to be in the same position, first position. C and C are good. Angles BC, that should be BCA. I am so sorry. Okay. So B and D, C and C, A and E were congruent, so they need to match up. Okay. Okay. To write the equation for the functions. Okay. So the equation looks like y equals a with x in parentheses, and we need to get the intercepts. We have an intercept of negative 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So that's going to be a plus 6 inside each of these. We have to use the opposite because we're trying to get 0, and the way you get 0 by plugging in negative 6 into x is to have a positive 6. So we're going to plug in any other point from our graph. We can plug in this point, which is negative 5, 1. So 1 would go in the y spot. Negative 5 would go in the x spot. So 1 is equal to a times 1 times 1. And 1 is equal to a times 1. Divide both sides by a 1 at the end. A equals 1. So our equation is y equals 1 times x plus 6 squared. Same thing over here. We have our intercepts. Our intercepts are located at 4, 0 and 6, 0. So 4, 0 and 6, 0. So we're going to make sure that we use y equals a times x minus 4 times x minus 6. We use the opposite when we're trying to make the equation. And we plug in any other point. I'm going to plug in the vertex, which is at 5, -1. So -1 equals a times 5 minus 4 times 5 minus 6. Okay. Again, 5 gets the x values because that's the x value of our vertex. Y gets -1 because that's the y value of our vertex. So this is going to be a 5 minus 4 is equal to 1. 5 minus 6 is -1. -1 is equal to -1 times a. Divide both sides by -1, and a equals +1 again. So that means y equals x minus 4 times x minus 6 with a 1 in front, because that's where the a value was before, and we solved that a was 1. Okay. Solve by factoring or completing the square. So I'm going to go ahead and complete the square for this one because I think you can't factor it. There should be blanks here. So that means we have x squared minus 14x plus blank equals -43 plus blank. We're going to cut the b value in half and square it. So that's -14 divided by 2 squared, which is -7 squared, which is +49. So that should be a 49 and a 49 here. You should always put negatives in parentheses when you're plugging stuff in, because otherwise your calculator will screw up. We're going to factor this left side. When you cut this number in half, sorry, the -14 cut in half, that's going to be an x minus 7 squared. And -43 plus 49 gives you a 6. Square root both sides, and x minus 7 equals plus or minus root 6. Add 7 to both sides, and x equals 7 plus or minus the square root of 6. Okay, for part B, what is that? 25, 19, 5, no, yeah, I don't think that'll work out. So let's go ahead and complete the square. So we have x squared minus 20x plus blank equals -95 plus blank. We need to do b divided by 2 squared to find what goes in the blank spot. -20 divided by 2 squared equals -10 squared, which is 100. So 100 goes here, 100 goes here. So we factor this left side. This will factor to be an x minus 10 squared. -95 plus 100 is a 5. Square root both sides, and we get x minus 10 equals plus or minus the square root of 5. Add 10 to both sides, and x equals 10 plus or minus the square root of 5. Okay. Solve using the quadratic formula. So again, we got a, b, and c. Make sure they're both equal to 0. They are. Let's plug it in. So x equals negative times a -5 plus or minus the square root of -5 squared minus 4 times 2 times 3 all over 2 times 2. Negative times a negative is a positive, plus or minus the square root. -5 squared is 25, and 4 times 2 is 8, times 3 is 24. So 25 minus 24 would be a 1, all over 2 times 2, which is 4. And the square root of 1 is 1, so we get 5 plus 1 divided by 4, or 5 minus 1 divided by 4. 5 plus 1 is 6, and 6 over 4 reduces to 3/2. 5 minus 1 is 4, and 4 divided by 4 is equal to 1. So those are our two answers for part A. For part B, sorry, just texting the wife real quick. So if you have x equals negative b plus or minus the square root of b squared minus 4 times 1 times negative 14 all over 2 times 1. Okay. So that's negative 9 plus or minus the square root. That's 81. Negative 4 times 1 is negative 4 times negative 14 is a positive 56. So this becomes 81 plus 56 under here, all over 2 times 1, which is 2. Negative 9 plus or minus the square root of, that becomes 137, all over 2. And you can't break down the root of 137, that is a prime number, so this would just be your final two answers, one with a plus, one with a minus. Find the unknown angle. So again, we want to find x. From x, we'll label our sides. This is our opposite side, and this is our adjacent side. So looking at SOHCAHTOA, opposite and adjacent means we're going to use tan. So that means tan of x is equal to opposite 21 over adjacent 25. Or x is equal to tan inverse, because we're looking for an angle, of 21 over 25. Tan inverse of 21 over 25 in a calculator comes out to 40.03. Okay. Now if you were to go from y as your reference angle, this is now your opposite side, and this is now your adjacent side. So tan of y equals opposite over adjacent. And you're trying to solve for the angle, so you have to use tan inverse of 25 over 21. And then tan inverse of 25 over 21 gives us 49.97. Okay. Same thing over here. Identify your angle, x. That's our opposite side, and this would be our hypotenuse side. So opposite hypotenuse is sine. Sine of x equals opposite 21 over 40, which means x is equal to sine inverse of 21 over 40. Plug that into your calculator, and you get 31.67. If you were to go from y, again, we're going to erase these sides. This would now be our opposite side. This one would be adjacent, and this one would still be hypotenuse. So adjacent and hypotenuse is cosine. So cosine of y equals adjacent over hypotenuse, which means y equals cosine inverse of 21 over 40. Plug that into your calculator. Cosine inverse of 21 over 40 comes out to 58.33. Okay. So installing a roof, we have to have a slope greater than 30 degrees. So let's check. Here's our angle, theta. On our opposite side, we have 8. This is our adjacent side, past the right angle. So opposite and adjacent is tan. Tan of theta equals opposite over adjacent, which means theta equals tan inverse of 8 over 15. Second tan of 8 over 15 gives us 28.07. And we would say the roof is not steep enough. because it's not at least 30 degrees, because it says having a slope greater than 30 is optimal. Okay. Next up, given the triangles, we have AB and ED have the marks. That's given. Then we have A and E. Angle A is congruent to angle E, given. Then we have the singular arc, AC is congruent to CE. That's also given. So this all points to triangle CAB is congruent to triangle. I went single arc double, so I need to go single arc double, CED, and that is by side angle side congruence. Solve the quadratics by factoring or completing the square or the quadratic formula. So we'll go ahead and try to factor it first. Negative 75 and 10. Two numbers that multiply to negative 75 but add to 10 would be a positive 15 and a negative 5. So that means we get x plus 15 times x minus 5 equals 0, or x plus 15 equals 0, x minus 5 equals 0. Solve for each of those. X equals negative 15. Add 5, x equals 5. For number 2, if we try to factor this, I think we can. 2 times negative 4, that's a negative 8. Negative 7, negative 8 and a positive 1. So we're going to go ahead and go to our area model. 2x squared goes in the top left, negative 4 in the bottom right, negative 8x and positive 1x would go here. Greatest common factor of 2x squared and negative 8x is 2x, which means that's an x. 1x without the x is a positive 1. And negative 8 divided by 2 is a negative 4. Check to make sure those multiply to be negative 4, and they do. So we get 2x plus 1 equals 0, and x minus 4 equals 0. When you solve each of these, you get x equals negative 1/2 and x equals positive 4. Moving along, you got to make sure you have it equal to 0 before you do anything. You actually can complete the square and just move the 12 over to start with. So you have x squared minus 10x plus blank equals negative 6 plus blank. We're going to cut the b value in half and square it. So negative 5 squared is 25. So 25 goes in our blank spots. Factor this to be an x minus 5 squared. Again, negative 10 divided by 2 is negative 5. And then negative 6 plus 25 is 19. Square root both sides. X minus 5 equals plus or minus root 19. And then add 5 to both sides to get x equals 5 plus or minus root 19. For part D, you need to use the quadratic formula. So we have x equals negative times negative 5 plus or minus the square root of negative 5 squared minus 4 times 1 times 3 all over 2 times 1. So x equals negative times a negative is a positive plus or minus the square root. That would be a 25 minus 12, which would come out to a 13 all over 2. And that is as simple as you can get. We can't break down the root anymore. For part E, to get rid of the square, you square root both sides, square root. X plus 2 equals plus or minus root 3. Subtract 2 from both sides, x equals negative 2 plus or minus root 3. For this one, let's go ahead and do the quadratic formula. A, B, C. X equals negative 1 plus or minus the square root of 1 squared minus 4 times a times c all over 2a. That's negative 1 plus or minus the square root. Negative 4 times 4 is negative 16 times negative 1 is positive 16. 1 plus 16 is 17 all over 8. That's as simple as we can get. And then I want to do a quadratic formula because hopefully I can reduce somewhere along the way. Make sure it's equal to 0 before you do that. X squared plus 6x plus 11 equals 0. So x equals negative 6 plus or minus the square root of 6 squared minus 4 times 1 times 11 all over 2 times 1. So this would be negative 6 plus or minus. When you do the square root, you get 36 minus 44, which is negative 8, all over 2. The square root of 8 can actually be broken down into 2 times 4 and 2 times 2. So we get negative 6 plus or minus. This would now become a 2i root 2, because whenever you have a negative root, an I comes out, all over 2. And negative 6 and 2 can be divided by 2. So our final answer is negative 3 plus or minus I root 2. Okay, to sketch the graph, they'll give you the numbers to plug in, but negative 2, negative 1, 0, 1, 2, 3, and 4 are kind of my go-to. So you're just going to plug each of these numbers into the function. So this would be negative parentheses negative 2 squared plus 3 times negative 2 plus 4. We get negative 6. Plug in negative 1, negative times negative 1 squared plus 3 times negative 1 plus 4. That's 0. When you plug in 0, all the x's will cancel and you just get 4. Negative 1, 1, negative 1. Yeah. When you plug in 1, you get negative 1 squared plus 3 times 1 plus 4. That gives you 6. You plug in 2. That's negative 2 squared plus 3 times 2 plus 4. We get another 6. And you'll see that they start repeating, so then you can go to 4 and 0.
Haven Rasainzi, please report to the main office. Haven Rasainzi, please report to the main office.
So the x-intercepts are the x value when y is 0. So we get negative 1, 0 and 4, 0. Our y-intercept is our y value when x is 0, so that would be a 0, 4. Our vertex is going to be in the middle of these two. The x value would be 1.5, because again, 1 plus 2 is 3, divided by 2 is 1.5. And when you plug it in to this equation, you get 1.5, 6.25. And then our line of symmetry is at x equals 1.5. So we plot these points, negative 2, negative 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Negative 1, 0, 0, 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 6, 2, 6, 3, 4, and 4, 0. So our graph would look like this. Write the equation. This is just like the one we did on the first page. Y equals a times x. Our intercepts are going to be negative 3 and 1. So we have to put in a positive 3 and a negative 1. Plug in any other point. 2 and 5 will be okay. So 5 equals a times 2 plus 3 times 2 minus 1. 5 is equal to a times 5 times 1. Which means 5 is equal to a times 5. Divide both sides by 5, and 1 is equal to a. So our equation is y equals 1 times x plus 3 times x minus 1. For this guy, same thing. Pick our intercepts. Boom, boom. So that means y equals a times x minus 1 times x minus 4. We are going to use any other point. I will use 0, negative 4 here. So negative 4 goes into y. 0 goes in for both of the x's. 0 minus 1 is negative 1. 0 minus 4 is negative 4. So this is negative 4 equals a times positive 4. Divide both sides by 4 to get negative 1 equals a. So y equals negative 1 times x minus 1, x minus 4 for our equation. And for the last one, our graph, we have intercepts at negative 2 and positive 6. So y equals a times x plus 2 times x minus 6. We're going to plug in any point. I'm going to use 0, 12. 12 equals a times 0 plus 2 times 0 minus 6. That's going to be a 2 times negative 6, or 12 equals a times negative 12. Divide both sides by negative 12, and we get a equals negative 1. So our equation is y equals negative 1 times x plus 2 times x minus 6.